I've been reading license suspensions of med spas from the Ohio Board of Pharmacy for a couple of weeks now, and they keep talking about finding Ozempic and Botox and other products that are labeled in Korean in these U.S. med spas, in these Ohio med spas, and just how dangerous it is that the healthcare professionals, if there are any at the med spas, can't read the boxes either. The Imitation Nation podcast covers all things counterfeit, hosted by Shabir Imber-Safdar of the Partnership for Safe Medicines and Sven Bergman of Venture Global. All statements are their own and not the opinions of their employers. Well, welcome everyone to Imitation Nation number 20. Look, we're almost old enough to drink, Sven.
We're almost old enough to drink, that's right. And it's Friday, 5 p.m. where I'm at, so I'm very close to actually doing that. So been a busy week. How are you?
I'm good. It's the middle of a Jewish holiday that involves eating outside. So my wife is planning a dinner party, which we're going to have outside in our backyard.
Very lovely. Very nice. Well, good to hear. So do you want to lead us off with our first kind of quick hit with the story that you saw?
Sure. So, San Francisco local fashion brand Baggu created a custom line of hats and water bottles adorned with what looks like the Bay Area Rapid Transit System's logo to celebrate the launch of its new store at 888 Valencia. There's just one problem. The transit agency BART had no idea it was happening. The quote, "It is not a partnership, and we are surprised to see our logo," BART Communications Director Alicia Trost told The Standard on Thursday. "We don't blame them for wanting to associate with our awesome brand, and we are thrilled they love us this much. But it would be nice if they reached out to us and perhaps share some of the profits since we are in a financial crisis."
First of all, I love the humor of it, right? The board comes like, "Hey, we're flattered. This is very nice, but it would be lovely if you ask permission or let us know or share the revenue." So that's absolutely fantastic to take that with a grain of salt. You know, it especially in trademark space, it is interesting. People just taking logos and just slapping them around and think they can just use them. So, but I like that they handled it good, and I hope that people will stop the violation, right?
I hope so too. The BART is really important for a lot of people to get around. It is, as all transit systems are, doesn't even break even, right? Very few transit systems that actually run well and are helpful and efficient can ever break even. The infrastructure and maintenance costs are just so high that they need government assistance. But then that is what, in my view, that's what government's for. But they certainly shouldn't be getting ripped off by people violating their trademark and selling merch. I think BART can get the money from its own merch, and you can pick on somebody else besides nice BART.
Yeah, as I always say, right? Flattery is the nicest compliment you get, or copy is the nicest flattery you can get, and so it's fantastic that a public transport system has such great brand equity that folks want to wear merch from it. So, there's a compliment there, but yes, the infringement obviously is not.
It is the most flattering. It is not the most lucrative compliment you can get. That would be the settlement from a Lanham Act dispute that BART is too nice to file in court against Baggu.
So mine really has to do with the dismantling of a piece of infrastructure that you and I have often praised on the show, OCTDETF, which is a task force that is within the U.S. Department of Justice. And we have received word that the U.S. Department of Justice is dismantling this task force, which is targeting major drug cartels. And the overhaul, which was approved by Attorney General Pam Bondi, also shuts down the Community Relations Service and Office for Access to Justice. It's affecting a total of roughly 275 positions. It's reassigning around 140 staffers. DOJ says they will move, or the move will help streamline operations and save over $11 million. But critics warn it risks weakening court capabilities in prosecuting cartel activity. And I think that's very right, because you and I have talked about many, many cases where OCTDETF was the lead agency who does incredibly complex enforcement actions. And so I'm a little troubled by this realignment to save, to be honest, just $11 million, which in the grand scheme of the U.S. budget is nothing.
I was really surprised to see this announcement, given this administration's commitment to chasing cartels wherever they are. There's probably no one in the U.S. government besides the OCTDETF task force that was really marshaling all of government, including Treasury, in order to go after cartels and prosecute, not just low-level dealers, but the entire leadership structure and take away their toys. And I'm really disappointed that this is happening. I don't really understand it. And I don't see how this isn't going to damage the administration's own goals for going after transnational drug trafficking organizations. Maybe they've got some other idea, or maybe someone just cut it, not realizing what they were going to lose. But the Partnership for Safe Medicines has done a number of videos and articles of coverage about OCTEF cases that we covered that were just really impressive law enforcement work. I'm really kind of sad to see this go. I don't think that this was necessarily the smartest move. I'm sure there's a more story behind it, but on its surface, it seemed like it was working pretty well, and so its loss will be felt.
Yeah. And, the Justice Department says that the task force's ongoing criminal cases, so the ones that are already in process, have been transferred to the newly created Homeland Security Task Force. So it's a further consolidation of power within Homeland Security. And yes, there's probably benefits, you can say, of consolidating and kind of getting the synergies within a department. On the downside is something like this can really get lost in a department the size of Department of Homeland Security, which has, over 70,000 staff. And so I very much agree with you. It was, a really effective task force. I'm worried what will happen to these very complex cases if they can be run as effectively. And, on this, time will tell. And I hope that some of the staffers are being basically just reassigned to DHS. But it's something that the folks I talked to, because I called around a bit on it, everybody was surprised or blindsided by this change. Everybody was very surprised that this was happening, and the law enforcement community is not necessarily happy about it. And so we'll see where this one goes. So, yeah.
Well, I'd say another loss here is, and people don't appreciate this, people just think, oh, a prosecutor is a prosecutor is a prosecutor. Well, there are people who develop specialties, right? Like here in San Francisco, there's a gentleman who for a number of years, his specialty was prosecuting physicians and others who ordered unapproved medicines, not approved by the FDA, from overseas and then gave them to patients. And that's a specialty. You have to know the law really well. You have to know how you present the best arguments to the judge. This isn't something you can just ask ChatGPT. It takes experience and courtroom experience, live experience. And, it's just it's really a loss when you have someone who's, a department like this or a task force that's specialized in international drug trafficking has been able to maintain a focus on cases that often take years to put together. For them to lose their attorney and just have their case handed over to somebody else who maybe doesn't even know the area as well, I think that's a loss, and I'm sorry to see it go. I think that's probably a misstep. Time, we'll see if other cases come out. So the Louisiana Department of Public Health warned the public about counterfeit Botox and to avoid receiving injections from unlicensed sources and non-medical settings like med spas. 2 different unrelated reports of severe illness following botulism toxin injections were reported amongst Louisiana residents in September. One patient bought injections online, and another patient received their injections from an individual with unknown licensure in a non-medical setting. That is, by the way, health department code for med spa or completely unlicensed facility. Both patients began experiencing botulism-like symptoms a few days following the injections, and both required hospitalization. There is an adage amongst harm reduction people that you should never use illicit drugs by yourself because, you can't Narcan yourself when you're unconscious.
Right.
It goes for all kinds of medicine, especially if you're buying Botox off the black market. You first, don't do that. And second, you are risking your life. You should not do that alone. You shouldn't do it at all, frankly. Even if you got some real Botox-like substance, you don't even know if they sent you a syringe, if it's sterile, right? I mean, the Botox may be real and the bacteria on the needle may also be real. So all of this is just super dangerous. And, we have seen Botox outbreaks for the last couple of years around the US as people buy Botox online. And it's just not advised. This is not the place in which you trust the hairdresser to tell you where to get the injection.
Agreed. Are you trying to tell me that everybody should get a Botox buddy and you only Botox with your buddy? But no, for me, it is, it continues to be a miracle how people, or a mystery, actually a mystery, how people do not understand that if I order something online and it is way cheaper than it's supposed to be, the person then wants for me to do the entire communication on an encrypted app on WhatsApp. They then ask me to pay it via PayPal, and it shows up in a weird package, most likely. How that is something I want to inject myself with. I personally just don't get that. I would never do that. Remember years ago when Tylenol had the issue with broken seals, and that was in pharmacies. I don't know if I would never, this is just me, I would never get anything that I inject myself with from anywhere else but my doctor, a hospital, or a pharmacy, or somebody that I know is licensed with an actual license from the public health department. So, and yeah, this is horrible. I don't even know what botulism does, but it is horrible.
Well, it causes your muscles not to move. And there have been cases where people have taken so much, they basically got lock-in syndrome, where they were alive, but they couldn't move or speak for, days, weeks. So we have made contact at PSM with one victim who talked to us about her experience. She did not want to go public, but she was in some court papers, but we respected her privacy. And it sounds terrifying, right? I mean, you're going to have a lot of time to think, but nobody needs that much time to think.
No. Yeah. And, without muscle movements, you won't have wrinkles, but, there will be other side effects as well. So, no, it's terrible. I hope people start to learn. I know our main story will also go into that, but I hope people start to learn that if you order something, it's too cheap and all of these red flags, just don't do it.
All right. Tell me about my favorite raid of the month.
Yeah, I actually think this might be the favorite raid of the year, not because of impact, because it wasn't massive, but police in Los Angeles raided a warehouse tied to a company called Cool Kicks, which is a high-profile sneaker retailer, on October 2nd. And the co-founder was among 4 people who was detained, and that co-founder's name is Adil Shams. Shams was live streaming an auction of sneakers exactly at the moment of the raid. So you can see the raid online. There's an entire Reddit thread on it that people commented on. And he initially speculated that he had been swatted. He hadn't been swatted. The law enforcement authorities had gotten indications that they're selling counterfeit sneakers. Cool Kicks issued a statement asserting they believed all merchandise was authentic and that their leadership has no knowledge of wrongdoing. The Shamster has right now been released pending further hearings and is scheduled to appear in court later this month. But this certainly takes Live PD, the TV show, to completely new levels when you actually have the receiving side live stream the raid. So there was not a lot seized, but it's very entertaining.
I gotta say, if I'm ever live streaming this episode, or we ever live stream our podcast, and I hear the Bad Boys song coming from outside my house, I promise you, I'm not gonna think I'm being swatted. I'm gonna think I'm in trouble for real.
Well, the closest we ever got to when you did your little test and sent me counterfeit stamps, and I was waiting for the U.S. Postal Inspector Service to doom, 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 open up. So, but yes, live rating is a new thing.
If you either have a television with over-the-air broadcast, or you have Hulu or Disney Plus, you can watch this new special that Nightline aired. It's an investigative report called The Dark Shot on the rise in fake Ozempic. And it has one of my favorite people in the world who works counterfeit pharmaceutical investigations, Special Agent Nicole Johnson of Homeland Security Investigations, along with noted investigative author Katherine Eban, whose book lives on my back wall for Zoom calls because it is one of the seminal works
That's right.
of counterfeit medicine. They talked to a British reality star who ordered her Ozempic off of WhatsApp, got random syringes in a box that had said Ozempic on the side, but was not a real box, took them and nearly died in her house until she recovered. They also went to the Port of Cincinnati, which is not too far from you, and proceeded to
No, it
talk
is
to
not.
the inspectors there about the crazy things that they find when they open up the mail that's coming into the country. So it's streaming on Hulu and Disney Plus. You can watch it. I just finished watching it this afternoon. I thought it was spectacular, and it really underscores how important it is to go to the right sources for your medicine.
Yeah, I will add this to my watch list for this weekend. I saw the Nightline report before that was kind of talking about it and kind of saw the summary. What it comes back down to me for, as you started to tell the story of ordered via WhatsApp and then there's random syringes, you're like, who could see this coming, right? For me, there's so many similarities in all of this to other illicit trade that we keep covering, especially for me, the illicit drug trade, everything we have been looking at, you and I, for years with the fentanyl pills. It is on these apps. They do it with misspelled words. So it wasn't Ozempic. They said we have to spell fake Zempic and then you get Ozempic. Then immediately when you talk to them, they're like, oh, let's move over to WhatsApp because it's encrypted and law enforcement can't see it. Then it goes to an electronic payment like, PayPal or any of the other payment apps or Venmo. And then they ship it via small parcel, either transshipped or directly into the United States. And so it's the exact same schemes that they're using for illicit drugs as they're using for these medicines. And for me, it's just, I really hope that, shows like this will continue to educate the public that you got to look for these red flags. Like when it says no script needed for a prescription drug, like it's literally in the word, right? But when they're like, no, I need a prescription. That's a major red flag to say, I probably shouldn't do this. When they
Why
say,
is it
oh,
called a
no, why don't we do
prescription
this via
drug if I don't
WhatsApp?
need a prescription?
I know. It's just this crazy way of people making money. No, but that's exactly it. And you have all of these red flags. And then I saw the Port of Cincinnati, it shows up and it's all written in Spanish. Don't take it, right? And so, there will be, there are major red flags. People need to be aware and avoid them.
One of the things that I noticed in the piece, okay, it's a really good piece. Everybody should go watch it. They were opening up in the Port of Cincinnati. The team there was opening up boxes of Ozempic from around the world, and there was a lot of it with Korean writing on it. Now, there's a couple of problems with this. So some people, in trying to excuse themselves, might say, oh, well, it's Korean Ozempic. It's just the same Ozempic as we get here. No, you can't even read the label. So we'll skip past the part where you don't know how to use the medicine, how to operate the pen, how much to dose yourself, because none of it's in English. And let's go on to the part of where you couldn't even tell if there was a typo because you don't read Korean. So that's why one of the many reasons why, just because it's from another country's drug supply doesn't mean that you're supposed to take it. But, as he was doing this, I was remembering that I've been reading license suspensions of med spas from the Ohio Board of Pharmacy for a couple of weeks now. They're doing an amazing job. It turns out med spas are a source of a huge amount of patient endangerment right now. And Ohio is at the forefront of protecting patient safety. And they keep talking about finding Ozempic and Botox and other products that are labeled in Korean in these U.S. med spas, in these Ohio med spas, and just how dangerous it is that the healthcare professionals, if there are any at the med spas, can't read the boxes either.
So what you're telling me, that Ohio, not only through Cincinnati, has really good enforcement, but we have such good enforcement because we use a lot of these illicit products in Ohio. Listen, it is a clear, it's always, it's the same trends, right? So I love that Ohio is doing this. I love that the health department and the board of pharmacy are going at this. But the reason why, you always got to think about, why do criminals do what criminals do, right? They do it because it's very simple. It's a very simple formula. If it's highly profitable, this is highly profitable, check. If it is something that is either easy to counterfeit or I can't really detect the difference as a consumer, check, because I don't know. It's a clear liquid. I have no idea what it is. Third one, if there's lack of penalties, so even if you get caught, it's a slap on the hand. We're not talking 25 to life, right? And then the last one is if there is a lack of enforcement. And I think, Ohio, obviously, because we're fantastic as a state, very good in enforcement on this. But nationwide, there's a lack of enforcement on this. I think people look at it as a nuisance thing, or like, oh yeah, somebody is, kind of, and it's not a nuisance thing. It's a real public health threat. People will get injured. People will get hurt. People will inject themselves with something that is not a prescription drug and a non-sterile needle. And this lack of enforcement, I'm glad that certain states are moving on it. It has to stop, because the only way to stop criminals ultimately is to provide a strong deterrent that says, if you do this, this will happen. So it's troubling. And I agree. Nicole from IPR Center is so fantastic. And I love that they're leading the charge, but it certainly is a big undertaking.
Anne Devod, who I think she leads the brand protection team for Novo Nordisk, was on camera for part of this piece, and she showed an insulin pen that had been rewrapped with an Ozempic label and put in a forged Ozempic box. And let me tell you, that thing looked perfect, absolutely perfect. And that is basically the similar to the ones that we've actually seen break into the legitimate U.S. drug supply. We've seen both insulin pens and I think liraglutide, which is an older GLP-1 style molecule. We've seen both of those break into legitimate drug supply, and it is a problem. It is a really big problem. That rarely ever happens, right. But it has happened, and it's still your safest bet. Like you're going to do a lot better going to a local pharmacy or ordering from the direct to consumer websites that both Novo and Lilly have than you are going to get something from a telehealth company, or definitely if you go to a med spa, you're in a lot of trouble.
Yeah. So here's why you just described is double disgusting. So in order for them to have that pen that they then wrap with a different label, that most likely was a used pen that they either bought off users or got out of trash cans. I'm not joking. It's a patented piece of technology. You can't just buy that on the open market. So they got a used product. They emptied it, refilled it. I'm sure sterilized it perfectly, which irony, right? So no, they didn't. Then they slapped a label on it and they ship it out, and you're going to inject yourself with that. That is, dear God, it's just crazy. It's terrifying, to be quite honest.
Look, when you get some kind of bloodborne infection from the bacteria on the needle, you're going to lose a lot of weight. I promise you.
Yeah. Yeah. And the last piece on this here for me, I just want to, because I will keep harping on it until it changes. Social media platforms need to do better. Like in the piece, I see her scroll on various apps. I won't name them, which all they are, but you know which they are. She's scrolling. She finds these sellers. So here's the thing. If she can find them, if law enforcement can find them, if consumers can find them, I'm pretty sure that social media companies could find them if they would want to find them, and make sure that those criminal actors, that's what they are, criminal actors, are not on these platforms, period. And I wait for the day when the large platforms will be brought to justice or brought to the table or forced to make sure that not only counterfeit drugs, but dangerous illicit substances, all of these things cannot be on these social media platforms anymore. And I'm just beyond disappointed that it is still so and increasingly prevalent on all social media platforms.
Yeah. Well, I think it's going to be difficult. As you know, the battle to try and get platforms to take more responsibility for who's on them has been a battle in which we have not made a lot of headway, and the platforms obviously do not want any liability. But especially Meta seems to have a distinct blind spot to the crime happening on their platform. And I think we need to change that. And obviously it's something I work on in my day job, but it's not easy going.
It is not easy. Now, the nice thing is there are certain things. So the National Defense Authorization Act was just passed. Although the government is shut down, they passed that piece of legislation through, which is great. And in there actually was one of them in there that makes sure that child exploitation online can't happen anymore. So there are ways that keep platforms accountable, move themselves through. It especially is in the child protection exploitation area. And I think as lawmakers will continue to start to see that these kind of crimes are very, very similar to exploitation, just dangerous to the public. And so it can happen. And I know that companies have the capability to do it. They just gotta wanna or have to make to. So 100%.
Yep. All right. Well, that is episode 20 of Imitation Nation. What are you looking forward to next week, Sven?
Well, I will be out of country, so I will be flying to Fiji, which I'm looking very forward to. So that's what I'm looking forward to. That's basically it. It's a wrap. I have nothing else.
I hope that you have a fully staffed tower of air traffic controllers despite the shutdown.
Well, I'm flying through your city to connect to Fiji, so I'll keep it upon you to make sure that you make sure that SFO is fully staffed, please. Thank you.
I got to take him some brownies or something because, I got a flight also in about a week and a half, and I would like that flight to take off and not wait around on the tarmac for the 3 air traffic controllers who reported to work without pay. All right. Thanks, everybody.
Have a wonderful cookout. Have a wonderful weekend. And please, Shabir, read us out.
The Imitation Nation podcast is a production of Cause Stories and is the sole owner. Podcast production by Anna Rowland, management by Sarah Ember Safdar, and theme music written by Jonathan Boyle.